Hey guys, welcome back to the show today. I am Kim Narker and I am the host of the Stretch Mobility Coach YouTube channel. And today I want to talk about a trending topic, hip tightness. And I want to talk about the real truth about how to improve your hip mobility long term. Now, what I mean by that is I don't want you to have to perform hip mobility drills 15 to 20 minutes a day just to gain mobility. And we're going to talk about why and dig deeper into this topic today. For those of you that have not heard about me, I am the founder of the Stretch Mobility Coach and the founder of the Stretch Method. And this method is rooted deep in physical therapy, but takes our approach into a preventative health and wellness platform so that we can actually provide you with long-term relief from pain and tightness. And guys, this topic of hip mobility is a big trend right now. And if you search YouTube or social media, you're going to find this new trend of active mobility drills or hip openers. Hip openers are really big right now. And most trainers are jumping on this bandwagon. And it wasn't too long ago that this bandwagon was stretching. So if you follow these gurus, you're going to get tips and you're going to be learning all of these hip mobility drills, and they're going to encourage you to do these drills daily. And they taunt, if you want this mobility, you must do these mobility exercises. Along with this, you're also seeing WOD bands, that's W-O-D, these thick, coarse, heavy-duty bands, and they're used to help mobilize the joint while you're doing your mobility drill. And all of it looks like it is the solution to your hip tightness. In today's video, we're going to dispel that myth and tell you what you can do to get true hip mobility long term without having to do these drills every single day for the rest of your life. Now, today I'm going to talk about this new trend and discuss if this is a good use of your time and if it's not, what you can do to save time and money in the long run. Now, first question I'm going to ask you is, will hip mobility drills help your hip mobility? And you've seen in other videos, I really dig into the deconditioning cycle. And this deconditioning cycle, guys, you can go into this deconditioning cycle in many ways. And there are many causes of this deconditioning cycle. But this cycle causes hip mobility restrictions. That means that if this is your joint and this is the bone and you're in the joint, your joint is supposed to allow for free movement of a bone. Okay, and for that hip mobility, your hip joint and the head of the femur sort of glides down, glides up. It spins internally and externally, and it abducts and it adducts. So flexion, extension, it internally, externally rotates, and it abducts and adducts. And if that capsule is tight, and tightness to me means that the normal joint mobility has been disrupted due to the deconditioning cycle. So if it's tight and you try to move it, that movement is going to come from other things and not the actual hip joint. So hip mobility drills are great concepts, and I am not at all dissing these drills because I love them. We use them in our everyday practice, but we use them in our everyday practice as a testing mechanism to see if the hip is disassociated from the joint. That means, is it moving in there all of the ways that it is supposed to move in there, or is that joint capsule tight and restricted? And that tight restriction is an indicator that you are in a deconditioning cycle, and your muscles are going to be affected, your joints are going to be affected, your tendons. There are a lot of things that play in, and I'm not going to go into the deep details of this, but if you're in an active deconditioning state, that state will not be stopped until you break that deconditioning cycle and you recondition the muscles. The muscles can lead to atrophy. When those muscles are atrophied, you are actually living that tightness, is because everything in your body is a joint restriction. So mobility drills, if you have a hip restriction and you're doing these drills, there is a high chance you are compensating with your movement. And if you go to YouTube and you search these hip mobility drills and you really look at the person, and if you have a good eye like we therapists do, and you can see compensation, you can see if that hip is truly moving in that capsule. And if it is, that's wonderful. These hip mobility drills are going to be helpful for you to gain more hip mobility. But if you have an active restriction and you're in a deconditioned state and you're doing these drills, you're actually causing stress because that hip joint is not disassociated from the joint capsule. When it's done that, it tends to be a little forward and a little out, and everything is tight in there and it's not moving correctly. That means it requires other areas of the body to move to perform the movement. Now, you are going to feel some flexibility. You are going to feel some short-term gains, but you're only going to be able to get about 5% or so of true mobility with doing an active mobility drill for your hips. Now, if you are looking for true hip mobility and you want hip mobility gains and you want that hip to disassociate and you want to make sure that those deep stabilizing muscles around that hip are all firing appropriately, and I'm here to tell you in most cases they're not, guys, then listen up through the entire video. Now, what happens when you don't have normal hip mobility and you perform these drills regularly? Well, if your hip is not moving and you're only moving a certain percentage of it, chances are a lot of that mobility is coming through your low back and it's coming through the pelvis. And those areas can cause some tightness in the low back and pelvis, and also can lead to low back strain or pelvis strain. And I'm not going to get into that stuff, but you can actually, these mobility drills, you're thinking you're doing a good job and you're not doing anything wrong, guys. I'm not going to say stop this, okay? I'm just saying that you need to look deeper as to why you feel like you need to do these drills, because there's something deeper going on, and it's typically that you're in a deconditioning cycle. Now, what can I do to improve my hip mobility long term? Well, guys, you have to go in and find out what joints are restricted and what joints are not restricted. And you need to find a practitioner that specializes in the deconditioning cycle and what that cycle is, and they know how to build programming around reconditioning muscles when a person is in an active deconditioning cycle. Now, what is that wad band, that thick band doing? You know, you've seen it connected to big pieces of equipment. People have wrapped them around their hips, their shoulders, whatever, and then they're doing these mobility drills. This wad band is what we call in our clinic a self-mobilization technique. Now, this isn't a bad technique. What it's doing is it's taking, if we're looking at the hip joint, you're going to put that wad band here and pull it this way. So it sort of gives a little bit of a distraction to that hip joint. So when you're doing these hip mobility drills, you're actually getting some glide in there. So doing it that way is going to give you a little bit more glide than it would be if you do it without it, especially if you have hip restrictions. But it's not going to give you a full assisted mobility. That can only be done by a specialized practitioner. And at this time, those specialized practitioners have license. So physical therapists can do this, and stretch mobility coaches can do this. Assisted mobility, we call it in the stretch mobility world. What's the most effective way to improve your hip mobility? Guys, if you are looking for hip mobility because you have back pain, or you're looking for hip mobility because you have pain with driving, or maybe you just have low back tightness, or maybe you just have tightness when driving, any of those things are indicators that something is going on and your hip mobility is restricted, and that means the joint's restricted. When the joint's restricted, the muscles are weakening, and they're not going to stop weakening until they're fully atrophied. And that's going to actually cause a lot of damage internally that we won't get into. But what you can do to improve hip mobility long term is to find a stretch mobility coach. And that is the program that I have and I teach PTAs to go through. These are certified practitioners that have a PTA license, but have decided they don't want to work in reactive care, and they want to actually work with consumers like you that want to improve their performance. Maybe you want to play your sport better, or you want to play it harder, or you want to increase your speed, or you want to decrease tightness and gain flexibility, or you want to gain strength that you can't do with your athletic training right now. It is a supplemental preventative program that actually improves the joint mobility to normal. And our baseline measures are based on what is normal, because abnormal is that deconditioning cycle. So you're going to see a stretch mobility coach, and they're going to do a consult. And in that consult, they're going to put you through some mobility type drills. They're going to test each of your joints to see if they're moving in a normal, healthy way. And then they're going to figure out at what point in that deconditioning cycle your muscles are in. Are they just tight, or are you actually leaning towards atrophy? And if so, the programming that they build is going to be around those areas to recondition those muscles and restore full joint mobility. So when you do these drills, you only have to do a few of them to warm up, and you get into your sport a lot faster. If you have true mobility, you decrease compensation, you decrease strain in your back, decrease strain in your pelvis, you're stronger, you walk better, you play better, and you live a better life. So if you want to improve your hip mobility long term, and you don't just want to do these hip mobility drills, then you can find a coach in your area by going to www.thestretchmobilitycoach.com/find a coach. And that will take you to a page, and it lists out all of our coaches. And if you don't find a coach in your area, then request a coach, because we're training PTAs 4 times a year to become a stretch mobility coach. Now, I'm going to end this video with how long it's going to take you if you just do your hip opening drills. People that do hip opening drills are going to have to do 5 to 7 times a week, and you're going to have to really focus on isolating the movement so that you get some gains in hip mobility. And it's not uncommon that it's going to take you 3 to 6 months to see long-term progress. And when you see a stretch mobility coach, you're going to see that progress and the gain. We can actually gain that hip mobility in the first visit. Now, it won't stay until you have enough stability to hold it, and there's a whole paradigm around what that program needs to be, and only a stretch and mobility coach has been trained in that. But if you want to spend 30 minutes a day doing your hip mobility drills, and then you want to exercise and you have all the time in the world, great, do it. But if you are that consumer and you're like, I don't have this time, I want to be able to get in, I want to work out, I want to get my 20 minutes in, and I want to make sure that my hips are healthy, then a stretch mobility coach is the best choice for you. Now, if you already have starting signs of arthritis, or you have starting signs of degenerative conditions in your hip, then a stretch mobility coach is also your next route, because now they're going to look at you in a different way, and they're going to be able to program and put a program together that is successful to decrease the advancement of that degeneration that is occurring. So if you already have arthritis, and many of us do, after the age of 50, then your next step is seeing a stretch mobility coach so that you can improve mobility. And if you're seeing a physical therapist right now and you're thinking, I might have to go to surgery, you definitely want to get a second opinion before you head into surgery to see if there are preventative ways to help you gain that hip mobility and stability, and see if we can help you avoid surgery altogether. Guys, thanks so much for joining me in this YouTube video today. I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to put a link below for you to have some free resources, and you can click on those resources to get some more information on hip mobility. There's also going to be a link here to click on Find a Coach in your area so that you can find a coach near you and regain that hip mobility and live without pain and tightness. Guys, thanks so much for joining me. Start living a life without limits today.